Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and on this episode, we're fresh off of the Nintendo Direct, the highly anticipated, some would say, September Direct. We have all sorts of games to go through. Nintendo's up to their old tricks. I'm going to go through it for you. And of course, Hollow Knight Silksong has released. Have you been able to play it? Some people had a bit of an issue with that. We're going to get into that in the news as well. And of course, in impressions, we have Rift of the Necrodancer, a rhythm-based game from the people who brought you Crypt of the Necrodancer, and then the Zelda spin-off as well. One of the few developers that have been given the keys to the Zelda license outside of something, normally within Nintendo's boundaries. They typically have a very tight grip on that. So, we'll get into that. But first, why don't you give us a like? Why don't you show us some love? We need some algo juice, pump us up a little bit. Give us some of those viewy roids. I don't know. I feel like this analogy I was going for really got off the rails really fast there. Why don't you just support us, okay? I don't ask for money. I do this for free, but I do ask for validation and support in the form of a thumbs up, a rating. 5 stars would be cool. Not trying to, not trying to push you, but, if you feel like it. I'd appreciate it. You can leave a review. You can even send an email into me. You can be a part of the show. pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. It's in the description if it's too long for you. While you're there, there's some timestamps there. That's a labor of love. I do it for you. If you don't like what I'm saying, you can skip it. If you want to hear me say something else, you can go directly to it. It's all for you. So, now, let's get into the juicy stuff. Who doesn't like juicy stuff? I like video game juice just as much as the next guy. But in terms of news, it's been pretty slow. I had to kind of figure out what I was going to talk about. And fortunately, we had a nice Nintendo Direct fall right in time, right when I was about to record. I was like, great. We can have something to talk about. There were a few smaller stories. I have Take-Two or almost saving Perfect Dark, saving it from the depths of death and destruction. We've talked about that. Perfect Dark was, of course, killed recently by Microsoft. Obviously, that was, Perfect Dark is a Microsoft game. A Rare title, X-Rare, and Microsoft obviously owns Rare. They brought it back. It was given to their own internal studio that they made to specifically remake it, and it seemed to have completely failed to a point where they just completely scrapped the project and moved on. But Take-Two was like, hey, we may be interested in that. And essentially, talks fell through. Why? Because the name ownership rights are kind of messy. They're obviously Nintendo has a little bit of a part within Perfect Dark, not much, but I wouldn't think they have much stake in that brand at all. But I'm assuming if Take-Two wanted to use Perfect Dark, they probably just wanted full rights, and Microsoft owns that. And so Microsoft was like, yeah, we're not giving up our right to the to the Perfect Dark brand to Take-Two. So, kick rocks. And they were like, okay, then the game dies. And it did. Just kind of I think this is not too sad. By most accounts, this game, not all apparently, but most accounts, this game was doomed. It was never going to be good. And, just another long line of Microsoft fumbles recently. But, I can't imagine Take-Two picking it up and making it better. Like, I just assumed that this game was probably going to come out and still be mediocre at best. And, nobody was really going to be super happy it lived anyway. I also just think that brand is, even though it has cachet, sure, of course, people like Perfect Dark who are really longtime fans of Rare or, grew up on the N64, something along or maybe even early Xbox 360 era. But, I think it's just been so long. And if you even go back and replay some of those games, they didn't age well. None of them did. So, I don't know. It just seems like one of those things that nostalgia has clearly propped up, and it just isn't coming back anytime soon, if ever at this point. Who knows? Or at least for another few decades. I think at some point the brand is just dead. When you have even the people who are nostalgic for it die off, I think you can't really go back to it anymore. But I spent more time talking about that than I thought. I thought that was kind of a minute story, but certainly something interesting. It's just interesting how these backroom, dealings, wheelings and dealings occur, and how difficult it is for anything to get off the ground. Another tiny story I was going to talk about was IO Interactive. They are no longer looking to publish. If you didn't know, they just published Mindseye, which on Metacritic right now is at a 34. That is, if you aren't familiar with what games normally score, that's really low. That's like worst game of all time level low. 34 is unheard of. You don't get a 34 unless you literally come through the television and stab somebody in the eyes. That's really bad. Okay. But that game flopped so hard. IO Interactive, the people behind Hitman, were like, no freaking way. We're not doing that again. That was their first game they had ever published. They were trying to move into being a publisher. They clearly picked the wrong pony at the show. And, I don't blame them. That was clearly a bad move. Honestly, when this game first got revealed, I heard, hey, the producer of GTA is the guy working on this. And that was enough for me to be like, well, this has a possibility of being good. Keep your eyes on it. And clearly, the producer of GTA is a good producer, but he's not a good director, which is a very different skill set. Not going to say that he didn't have any contribution into the success or, what made GTA good or the GTA games that he worked on, but clearly he's a good producer. He's not a good director. So unfortunate for IO Interactive to have, tied themselves so closely to that project, unfortunately. We'll see if anything ever comes of Mindseye. They were trying to do something really big with that, making it a huge universe kind of thing. Can't imagine that comes to fruition now. I don't see a No Man's Sky future for this particular project. I would assume it's just kind of going to be... honestly, forgotten is pretty generous considering games that review this badly. I mean, I feel like this really flew under the radar. I was expecting this to be No Man's Sky. That was when that came out. Cyberpunk, when that came out, that was all the conversation was this game was horrible. Clearly, people weren't expecting Mindseye to be some huge thing. People weren't hyped about Mindseye in the same way they were Cyberpunk or No Man's Sky, which were ungodly amounts of hype that people were putting all of their hopes and dreams into, that were never going to meet the expectations people had for them. But I think honestly Mindseye got off pretty well. I don't see all this clickbait stuff about how bad Mindseye is, and that I feel like it came out, got really bad reviews. People were like, I got plenty of stuff to play. That's, good. One less thing for me to have to buy and play and put time into. Moving on. And normally people on the internet love to dogpile on that stuff. They love, that negativity, those rage clicks, those, let's schadenfreude it up. But yeah, Mindseye, no bueno, is kind of just the ultimate punchline to that whole story there. And then the final story that I was kind of borderline, I'm clearly talking about them way more than I clearly have way more to say about these things than I assumed I did. They were going to be my main topics before the direct occurred and announced and occurred in a very short amount of time. But the last one is all players who communicate in Roblox will be required to get age verified by the end of the year. This is something I would have loved to have done more research on. I see this bandied about a lot. The problem is I'm just not a Roblox connoisseur. I don't know anything about Roblox. I mean, I know I've tried to listen to people who are, experts in the industry talk about Roblox, but I kind of know what Roblox is, but every time I see Roblox footage or games or anything, I'm like, this looks like garbage. This looks really bad. I can't believe that this is one of the biggest games in the world, and every child is obsessed with it. I didn't know. That's kind of crazy. The big thing behind this, obviously, I guess kind of segueing into the actual news story, is this is apparently the biggest pedophilia ring ever. It's just filled with just people who want to molest children. And that's probably, if I knew that every child in the world was going to be in one place and didn't have adult supervision and I was a pedophile, that's probably a pretty good idea to be involved with that. I think that my interests align greatly with that particular platform, clearly. But this has, I feel like that's everywhere though, right? Anywhere that you can find a child on the internet without supervision, there's probably some creep trying to figure out how to take advantage of that. And it's okay, this is no different, right? Apparently not. Apparently this is really widespread, really egregious. They are not doing anything to stop it. To a point where literally Chris Hansen has come in and been I'm going to do, which if you don't remember Chris Hansen, he was the dude who did Dateline NBC, To Catch a Predator. He would basically set up pedophiles to come into a room and then confront them when they were about to molest. They thought they were about to molest a kid. It's he's kind of infamous in a way for busting pedophiles. Now we just have people on social media who just do that anyway and just beat them up or something. But anyway, the times have changed from Chris Hansen to just vigilante assault against pedophiles. But anyway, there's also been a lot of lawsuits against Roblox. Several states have sued Roblox and are hey, buddy, we heard children are in grave danger playing your game. We want to stop that. There has to be I know so little about this. I'm bro, I feel maybe I should never touch Roblox because maybe that puts me on a freaking watch list. Are you above 20 and play Roblox? You may be a child predator. That's kind of what I get the vision of seeing all these headlines. But this is Roblox's first real big push to be yeah, if we think you're a kid, we want you to kind of prove it. Or prove you're not, and if you are, why the frick are you playing this game? If you're not, why the frick are you playing this game? I guess is the question they would be asking, but that's obviously not what they're going to verify. They're just going to be verifying the age. This also kind of goes in tandem with the UK's requiring age verification for a lot of internet services now. Just kind of a thing that's kind of moving forward in a lot of ways. I know that America has a lot of laws around that as well. I know because still have to find alternatives to Pornhub in my state, unfortunately. Think we all know that pain. But anyway, this is just something I would love to do more research on. I probably would have done more research on if I thought this was my main news topic for the week. But for now, it's just kind of a reason for me to be what the frick is going on? What in God's name is happening in Roblox? Because I can't stop hearing about horrible things happening there. Okay. Moving on is to the actual headlines. This is going to be my top front-runner headline. Hollow Knight Silksong has finally released. Now, I played Hollow Knight 1, completed it, beat it. Interesting game. I think great game. Not a game I would ever really want to go back to. It is hard. It wasn't something that resonated with me clearly that in a way that it resonated with so many other people. And by so many, I will say, so many tried to get it when it released on all storefronts that it ended up crashing them, which is something I don't think I've ever said before. I don't think I've ever seen it before. All storefronts, Steam, Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo eShop, specifically the eShop, they had to take it offline for maintenance. It was so bad, which doesn't surprise me. Hollow Knight is very Switch-coded, similar to Hades. Hades and Hollow Knight, the original Hollow Knight, were both games that kind of came out on the Switch and got a lot of their legs there. The Switch, when it originally started, obviously was, coming off of the Wii U era, and the Wii U era meant nobody wanted to touch the Nintendo consoles, because everybody put a bunch of games out on the Wii U when it first released because the Wii was such a big deal. They were like, oh, well, we want to be a part of that ecosystem because the Wii had so many people in it and they're all going to transfer over, obviously. Well, obviously that didn't freaking happen. And so then, a lot of publishers felt burned and never put any of their big games on the Switch at release. So what ended up happening was indies flooded the Switch because that was the only place that you could really get some eyes on your game, because if you went to Steam, that place is already covered in indies, and that's it's really hard to get noticed there in general. And then if you went to a PlayStation or something, visibility on those platforms is all AAA publishers and stuff like that. So of course you go to the one console where nobody's putting their games, which is the Switch. And in that kind of indie renaissance, Hollow Knight kind of, rose to the top. And that was I remember when Hollow Knight came out, nobody gave a frick about it. That was there were a few people kind of screaming from the rooftops, we need to play Hollow Knight. It's really, really good. And, it eventually materialized. Word of mouth kind of helped it out a lot, but you could get that game on a deep sale really soon after release because they were just trying to get people to buy it. And it ended up selling very, very well with word of mouth. 15 million units is what they said the game ultimately sold. 15 million. One of the best-selling games of all time is Hollow Knight. Surprisingly so. So the fact is, Silksong was the most wishlist game on Steam, has been for years, and here you are. It finally releases, and of course, you're going to be hit with issues. Of course, on the eShop, so that made sense to me. Of course, on Steam, most wishlisted game on Steam, of course. PlayStation, apparently, you were not able to get in on that super easy either. I would have thought that would have been one that would be really easy to get. I wasn't trying on PlayStation, and I didn't see many reports of that, but I'm reading reports that was an issue. Still, it was possible, but, it was not easy, not exactly in the way it normally is, of just you click a button and it's done. And then, of course, Xbox has a Game Pass deal with Silksong, which nobody seems to be talking about. Everybody seems to just be buying the game. Even if you have a Game Pass subscription, I feel like people are just going to the Switch too to play it, because it's just something to play on their Switch too. But anyway, very crazy to see this game crash storefronts. Clearly the hype was insane. To transition off of the hype, it seemed to be the only conversation I heard about this game at release was it was too hard and poorly designed at the beginning. So much so that and I saw this coming a mile away. The developers even announced, okay, we're going to patch the opening of the game because we kind of get a lot of people aren't happy with it. We'll update it and make it easier, which totally saw that coming. The pushback on that was so immediate and so widespread for a game this hyped. I was like, bro, there has to be issues here. The issues I was primarily hearing were obvious game design problems. Specifically, a lot of people that I saw were complaining about health and damage. So a lot of apparently like no enemy does 1 damage. One mask is the currency of health in this game, but no enemy does like 1 damage to you. They all do like 2 because the game's hard, right? So like health upgrades basically are worthless unless you have 2 of them, and health upgrades were not very easy to find early in the game. So like essentially the difference between 5 hits or 5 health and 6 health is completely there is no difference, because you're still going to be able to take 3 hits because everything's doing 2 damage. So like if that is accurate, again, I haven't played the game, but like if that is accurate, that's clear, obvious, like who you could probably play the game pretty easily and be like, yeah, maybe we should not do that because yeah, it completely diminishes our health economy. That doesn't make sense. I've heard that the benches were super far away from bosses, which if you aren't familiar, benches are essentially your checkpoints. So if you die, it's very Souls-like. You have to go back to the boss room. You have to go through the area that you were just at and get back to the boss. And apparently those were very far away from the bosses, making death runs incredibly tedious and difficult. And yeah, I mean, like, I think that's bad game design as well. I mean, you can have a death run back to the boss, sure, but like you can't make it be like intense platforming and super difficult to get back to the freaking boss. At least in a Dark Souls game, you can just run past all of the enemies and get back to a boss if you really wanted to. In fact, most of the time, I think that's what most people would do, is if all they cared about is the boss, they would just, and they knew exactly how to get to it, they would just run past all the enemies, and that was like a valid way to engage with the game. And it was something you could normally do pretty easily if you knew your way around the area. But anyway, fact of the matter is, very interesting to see any pushback on this game at all. And, you know, kind of what I've been hearing, it seems anecdotally, based on what I'm hearing, is like this hype was just kind of a meme. And I think that's harsh. Right? The hype was real. A lot of people really liked Silksong, really liked Hollow Knight. But like, I think it shows me that pretty much every time somebody was talking about it that I heard, it was like, oh yeah, I played Hollow Knight, but like I didn't really like it that much, or I kind of bounced off of it, or like, yeah, it was kind of hard, and I just didn't want to deal with that at the time, so I just never went back to it. And it's like, oh, okay. Like I hear nothing on the internet except for people screaming for this sequel and wanting it so bad. I would have just assumed it's like a Dark Souls game and everybody's played it, everybody loves it. You can't find a soul saying anything bad about it. And, like when it comes out, it's just going to be met with overwhelming praise. And like there will be nothing bad to say about it. So to see almost immediate backlash from people, I think it shows a lot of people jumped on this bandwagon, assuming this game was going to be the best game ever because, like they had never played the first one and all they had ever heard was it was really good. And then they kind of got into it and they were like, oh, well, this is not what I wanted it to be. Like, I really didn't know what I was getting into. And so, like now it's a lot of people kind of pushing back on this difficulty, which like, I remember the original Hollow Knight being hard. It's been a long time since I've played it. I remember the original Hollow Knight being hard, but like I really kind of remember the opening of the game to be okay in terms of difficulty. It was fine. It wasn't that bad. And then really the difficulty, the further you get into the game, it's really backloaded with hard stuff. Like if you really wanted to like 100% and get like a true ending to Hollow Knight, you were going to have to go through some freaking trials and tribulations. There's like the final boss I remember being really difficult, multi-phase boss. I remember there's like a super long boss rush mode. Like if you want the true ending, you have to like go through this super hard boss rush. it's like almost masochistic in terms of its difficulty. So, and like this was Hollow Knight. I mean, Silksong. I was kind of buying in on the hype originally when it first came out. I was like, yo, like I liked Silksong, or I liked Hollow Knight. Dang, keep me honest, man. I'm gonna keep messing up with that. I like the original Hollow Knight. I'll pick up Silksong. It's only $20, which, by the way, another segue. Kind of insane. This game I easily assumed was going to be $30-$40. $20, that's insane for a game that, I mean, like, and honestly, at a $20 price point, I feel like I was definitely like, $20, that's not that bad. You know, like, for a game that I already know is going to be an easy 30-hour plus experience and like be quality, like at least be a good to great game, $20, that is a steal. That is such a good deal. I feel like you can impulse buy that, no problem. But like, you know, I think a lot of people saw that and said the same thing, and they said, "Yeah, sure, I'll pick it up anyway." You know, like I'll pick it up, I'll try it. It's $20. You know, it's not like it's $70. You know, like most full price, you know, day one releases on a console, $70 would be freaking insane. You know, like because you're basically, and then plus tax, you're really spending like $80. So like, you know, $20, yeah, sure, why not? And then you get into it and you're like, oh frick, yeah, I think that there's some problems here. Again, still think that's insane that was the majority of the discourse. To a point where I knew that the developers were going to patch it. I think an indie developer like this Team Cherry, the developers behind the original Hollow Knight and Silksong, they clearly tried to make, like, Hollow Knight was added on and iterated on over a very long period of time. A lot of expansions. Technically, Silksong was initially intended to be an expansion. It was a Kickstarter. The original Hollow Knight was a Kickstarted game, and one of the stretch goals was Silksong. So some people got free keys to Silksong because they backed the original Hollow Knight on Kickstarter for that expansion, which is just kind of wild. But like, anyway, that was a long time ago. But anyway, I forgot where I was going with that. But anyway, it's an interesting... Oh, yeah, I was saying... Sorry. Podcaster brain. I was saying, you know, Team Cherry iterates upon this stuff, or has been iterating and building upon, you know, Hollow Knight for a long time. I think they really did a lot in terms of tweaking it after release, you know, putting a lot of work into it. And, you know, I think a lot of indie devs, when they have that kind of freedom... And, you know, they don't have, you know, like an EA management style that's like, well, we need to get a sign off to do this patch, and we need to have 500 different people say this is okay. You know, like, I think if you're a Team Cherry, you got like 5-10 people in a studio making this game, whatever it is, you know, and you're like, hey, I think I'm going to tweak this. Okay, do it. Push the patch. You're good. You know, it's a lot more streamlined in terms of being able to do your work. So, you know, like a quick fix like that is totally manageable. And, you know, I think they're going to continue to do that. I don't think Team Cherry looks at themselves as our game is, you know, like too good. You know, like Dark Souls or FromSoft has said that kind of thing in the past, where they're like, yeah, freaking get good, scrubs. You know, like if you don't like the way our game was designed, you just don't appreciate our art, which I will never forget that they had to change the Elden Ring DLC. They had to alter it because people were saying it was too hard, and so they freaking changed it. F you, From Software. But anyway, freaking stick to a lane, buddy. You know, like, is it too hard by choice, or is it too hard because you freaking suck at, you know, like managing the difficulty? Clearly, it's one or the other. But anyway, I heard that this game was super hard. And, like, people were pushing back on it so bad, I was just like, yeah, I'm going to hold off on this. Like, I really don't need to play it right now. It would be cool. I'm trying to get through some other games at the moment, though. And it's like, it'll be there. It's super cheap. It's not like I'm missing, like, a freaking good sale or anything. I can play it on Game Pass any day now if I really felt like it. And it's like, you know, I'll come back when they're clearly going to tweak the difficulty in this a little bit. And, of course, they have. But, like, at the same time, I also am just really turned off by super hard games. I'm not one of those masochistic players. I live by a motto of my life is hard enough. I go to video games to avoid that, like to have fun, to not beat my head against a wall and, like scream and throw a controller, because, oh man, another challenge. I don't need another challenge in life. Okay. I got enough. So difficulty, if people are screaming it's way too hard, I'll come back when I'm in the mood. I'm rarely in the mood for a very hard game unless it's a very good one. Which, I will get around to Silksong eventually. Just, give me time. I don't have enough time. Speaking of time, I don't have enough time for all the games that I thought looked good in the Nintendo Direct. That's right. We're talking about the Nintendo Direct. I am fresh off the Nintendo Direct. Just aired at the time of recording. Well, not just, but, I'm a few hours out. I have a job, okay? So can't do it at, what was it? It was an hour-long Direct, so I can't do it at 9 a.m. my time. So I have to do things my boss tells me. But anyway, 90 minutes is the longest, or excuse me, 60 minutes, not 90. 60 minutes is the longest Direct Nintendo has ever had. I had low expectations for this. Normally when I hear that, I hear, okay, well, Nintendo has a lot of marketing agreements that they have to fulfill, and I'm going to be looking at B-roll for like a bunch of freaking cozy farming games for 90 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever the frick. And this was not at all the case. Clearly, we had Mario's 40th anniversary. We'll get rolling in it. How about that? We started off with Mario's 40th anniversary. They were doing a couple of nice things, a nice little, what do you call it? Just, recognition, trying to spread awareness of Mario's 40th birthday. Specifically, they mentioned like we're going to be helping out with the Tokyo Marathon, or excuse me, the Kyoto Marathon. We're going to have bibs people can wear with like Mario on it and stuff. Oh, very kind of you, Nintendo. Very nice. Nintendo Museum's ticket stubs are going to change to represent Mario's 40th birthday. Couple small things like that. Just some kitschy stuff. Nice thematic things. Speaking of which, I almost went into... I tried. Not almost. I wanted to go to the Nintendo Museum while I was in Japan last year. That was when it had just opened, though, and it was like a lottery system to get tickets. Basically, I didn't get lucky. It would have also been really difficult for me to go with how jam-packed my schedule was at the time, but, it is what it is, unfortunate. But anyways, I heard it's okay. I heard it's fine. So I don't feel like I missed anything crazy, but it would have been cool to go. Anyway, moving on. Actual game stuff. First thing they talk about is not a game. I jumped the gun. I misread my headline here. It was the Super Mario Galaxy movie coming out April 2026. You all know Super Mario the movie. One of the highest grossing movies of all time. Literally, I think top 3 animated films of all time. Yeah, that one. I watched the original movie. It's the most okay movie I've likely ever seen. Very colorful, very, very much a movie you would put a toddler in front of and just be like, isn't it colorful and zany? You'll like that. And then, very much a Minions. I mean, it's made by the same studio. It's made by Illumination, which made the Minions, Despicable Me movies, the whole 9 yards, Secret Life of Pets, very much, like this is a child movie. I think even comparative to Despicable Me or any of those other movies, Super Mario was like a very... almost, I would go as far to say it was a very cash grabby-esque kind of film, where clearly nobody really wanted to put much actual effort into it. So script is it's very uninspired. It's just very uninspired. But they kind of tease Yoshi at the end of the first movie. If you stick past the credits, you see like, oh, Yoshi's going to be in the next one. Okay. Well, I was like, okay, well, clearly they're going to make a Super Mario World movie Because if you didn't know, that's where Yoshi is introduced within the, canon of Mario games, is Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo system. And they're like, no, we're just going to Galaxy. And I'm like, what the frick? Wouldn't the obvious transition would be to go, I think it's, maybe I'm crazy. I'll walk you through my thought process. Mario, the Mushroom Kingdom, first movie, you just go to the Mushroom Kingdom. Cool. That's like an isolated land of sorts. World, that's bigger than like a land, right? Okay, we're moving from a land to a world. World to galaxy. Hey, I think it transitions pretty well, and you have a trilogy there that makes sense. No idea why they said, yeah, let's go with Galaxy. I guess it's because it's kind of what a lot of people consider to be the best Super Mario movie, or not movie, but game. Babies don't know that. Babies aren't going to freak out about that. That's more like if you were around for the Wii, which if that's the case, you're probably like 20 something. If you were a kid when the Wii was around, I think, mid 20s is probably where you're going to expect to see that. Low 20s best, best case scenario. Which I even think at that point you've aged out of the Super Mario movies. Or I think you definitely have. I think teenagers have aged out of them. But I'll watch it. And yeah, sure. I'll go to theaters. I'll probably pay upcharge. I'll frickin' get a nice big bucket of popcorn or something and watch the Super Mario Galaxy movie in theaters April 2026. Good transition. A follow-up to this as part of the big 40th anniversary announcement for Super Mario. This is something I was actually really happy about. Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 Remaster. So, very excited about this. I'm going to get into why, but first I'm going to go into the blurbs here. I have a few blurbs about a few of these games, so stick with me. Each will individually cost $40. Not to unpack there already. They will be bundled. You can get both of them for $70. Okay, Henry, okay. Well, what do I get with these remastered titles? Surely they've given me something worthy of a $40 to $70 upcharge in playing these games. You're going to get some more pages in Rosalina's books. That is the big update, the extra content that will be added to these remasters. I was like, oh, well, when I initially saw this, I was like, well, I only have to buy 2, right? Because, so, backstory to this is I've never played, well, I played Galaxy 1 at this point because it was in 3D All-Stars, and I have 3D All-Stars, but which came with Super Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy. I couldn't play them before that because I never had a Wii growing up. I had a PlayStation 3 at the time. And a PlayStation 3 can't run Mario games. So, I never actually got to play them. I tried to, don't tell the FBI, emulate them at some point, and I couldn't. So the FBI can't get me because I haven't admitted to actually pirating them. But the reason that is because Wii games are really hard to emulate because you have to bind motion controls to a controller or to a keyboard. And the horrific part about that is a lot of power-ups in Super Mario Galaxy change what you do when you do specific moves, or if you waggle the controller, as Mario, you do a little spin, but if you waggle the controller as a bee, you I don't freaking remember, but it was something you freaking, I don't know, you freaking go up really high or something like that. Anyways, what it essentially meant was, or I remember what it was. It was there were some things where you had to hold the controller level and then use the gyro to kind of like roll yourself down like as a ball, like down a hill or something like that, like tilting the controller. And like essentially every time you went to a different level, you would have to rebind the controls for every single level. And I was like, F this. This is way too much work. This is way too much work to play this game. I don't care if it's the best game ever or the best Mario game ever, which a lot of people say it is. I have no interest in playing it because it's nigh unplayable, because every 5 seconds I have to exit out of the game, rebind the controls, get back into the game, figure out if I even binded the controls correctly, and then even after that, even if I did, it still feels like garbage to play. So like it was just not worth it for me. So like I was like, cool, they brought Super Mario Galaxy 1 over. Super Mario Galaxy 2 was never ported in any way to the Switch. So it has forever been locked, or at least up until now, it's been locked on the Wii. So I've always been like, dang, like I know they're going to bring it over at some point, but like I hope to God it's not predatory. Unfortunately. So I was like, okay, well, I only have to buy the second one, right? And they're like, well, actually, the copy of Super Mario Galaxy in 3D All-Stars was just an emulated version. It's not actually updated in any way outside of the fact that you don't have to use motion controls. So really, the definitive version of Galaxy is going to be this. And it's like, well, what are you doing? It's like, well, we're adding pages to Ronalisa's book, which is absolute garbage. Who cares about that? And we're increasing the graphics. We're making graphical improvements. And you can play it in docked mode on the Switch 2 at 60 frames, 4K resolution. And it's like, okay, like that's not worth $40. Like that is so crazy, considering 3D All-Stars was $60 and you got 3 different Mario games, including Super Mario Galaxy 1, which you are now selling a la carte for $40. It's absolutely asinine. It's insane. This is some Nintendo predatory bullcrap, and you know what? I frickin' fell for it because I want to play Super Mario Galaxy 2. And like I am a big platformer guy, and that is a game that I really want to play and have wanted to play for a really long time. It's considered one of the best platformers ever made, and I feel like I really should play it, and I'm going to really have a good time playing it. Should I be paying $40 for a game that is multiple decades old and has not really been changed in any way other than like making it playable on modern consoles? No, like that's really unfortunate. And Nintendo tends to do scummy stuff like this all the time. And I genuinely think, and I've called Nintendo out for this many a time as well on the podcast. That's right, because Nintendo, I have a lot of balls to do that because Nintendo is listening to the Plug and Play podcast right now, and who knows, they could sue me because they tend to sue freaking everybody. But anyway, like that's, I'm going to go through, there's going to be other things in this freaking direct that I'm going to be like, yeah, that's kind of scummy. Like, why did Nintendo do that? That's kind of scummy. And they get away with this. I genuinely think it is people are so nostalgic for this brand. They are willing to let them do freaking anything. They obviously also make really quality products. It's hard for me to deny it. Nintendo's, I think, if we legit want to consider them a developer, they are the best developer in video games. I think bar none. I think, you think about The Legend of Zelda, you think about Mario, you think about every other game they have under their publishing branch, like that's the best developer. The thing is each team is different, so like they're really not a developer, right? Like, they're making these games, sure, but like there are different teams that are working on each game. So it's not like going to Naughty Dog and it's like, well, every game that they're making is made by the same team. It's, it's very segmented in that way. So like that's why nobody ever says that in a conversation about best developer. But anyway, like, they make great games. Like it's really undeniable that they do. And they really, I think, get away with a lot of scummy things because, one, they have really good nostalgia backing them and they have really good marketing. I mean, when I watch a Nintendo Direct, I'm like, these bumbling doofuses would never do anything intentionally malicious. I feel like I watch anything on the Nintendo Direct and I'm like, oh my gosh, they just didn't know any better. Like, somebody should have told them it shouldn't have been priced at $40. Like, they probably would have done something, like Nintendo would have, that guy, they wouldn't do that to me. I feel like that's the vibe I get. And I feel like everybody just kind of lets them walk on it. And, I don't think that's really cool, but I'm going to be doing it anyway. I'm going to let them walk on it too. But I'm at least going to be vocal and be like, yeah, that really sucks. And Nintendo's going to do it again and again and again and again. But hopefully they just will eventually not get away with it at some point. I don't know. The revolution is coming, ladies and gentlemen. It's coming. You can even buy a book of the Rosalina picture book physically, like a real life one from the game, for $25. Nice. There's a few other things like that kind of in this direct. So not just amiibos, which, by the way, I left off. I did not want to talk about amiibos because they are just toys, and they don't change anything except for the people who will claw your eyes out to collect them. So, it is what it is. There's several amiibos that were announced during this direct. I did not talk about any of them. I've never had an amiibo, nor do I particularly want one. Next up was Mario Tennis Fever. This looks possibly like the most playable Mario Tennis I've ever seen. And by that, I mean it actually kind of looks fun. Coming out February 12th, 2026, which, by the way, that Super Mario Galaxy stuff is coming out October 2nd. I think I skipped over the release date. So very soon. But anyways, Mario Tennis Fever. I'm not a big sports game guy. The only way you can really get me to play a sports game at all is if it's very arcadey. I want my sports games to be fun. I don't want these mother effing Sims in my mother effing life. Okay? Like I said, I got enough going on in real life. I don't need to be reminded it exists outside of my video game time. So if I'm going to be playing tennis, it better not be some boring real tennis. I better be hitting giant freaking meteors at people on the tennis court or something crazy. And this kind of seemed like, they're kind of leaning into that. It looks like the mechanics have been updated since the previous Mario Tennis game. I played a little bit of the last one. There was an open beta for it at one point. It is a tennis game. I didn't really care about it at all, nor will I ever. This seemed like the mechanics had been kind of updated. It was a little bit smoother, a lot more options. And then, of course, they put a lot of emphasis on the arcade modes. There's some Mario Wonder elements that are kind of in there, which in that case is super trippy, crazy off-the-wall things that just kind of appear on the course. That's cool. I think that's awesome. And then to top it all off, for me, they put in an adventure mode. So a single-player campaign where you're actually walking around an open area, kind of like a 2D isometric kind of deal. And eventually you'll obviously start tennis matches with people and fight people with tennis. So, that's kind of cool. I think that's why don't more games do that? Why don't more arcadey games do that? I don't know. But if I was ever going to play a Mario Tennis game, this would be the one. I won't be. Just throwing that out there. But, I love the improvements they've made to this. It looks really good. I think if you like Mario Tennis, you should really enjoy this one. Or at least I would if I was a Mario Tennis fan. Next up, since Nintendo wants to bring everything they can over to the Switch 2 to try and upcharge you, Super Mario Wonder will be coming to the Switch 2, getting its own version with an upcharge, $20 coming onto this one, upgrading it. You're going to get new extra content, which is, of course, multiplayer, which kind of shocked me. That is not what I would expect from this. I would expect maybe more levels, maybe a whole new area with new mechanics, new Wonder, kind of things happening in the levels or whatnot. I really enjoyed Super Mario Wonder. I don't think I ever talked about it on the podcast, but I played it last year with my wife. It's a lot of fun, really enjoyable time. And this just seems like an odd inclusion to this. I know that like multiplayer in this is fun, but it's never been competitive. In a way, it kind of is. You play these games and, like you're kind of ranked at the end of each level of like, well, who got the most coins? Who died the least? And that kind of stuff. It's mildly competitive in a way, but not super competitive. This is like legit competition. Like there's a winner and a loser to these games. Specifically, like there's like a hide and seek game and like a tag game that they showed off. I don't know. I really like the game, but I don't have people that I would probably play this with, at least regularly enough to drop extra money on it. So spring of 2026, I will be passing. I have no reason to pick this up. So really odd inclusion there. Not odd, but I mean, there's some tangential relevancy to it. But again, it is what it is. If you really, really like Super Mario Wonder, you can buy your own annoying flower from the game. That's right. Those flowers that talk at you, you can have it. And you can make it talk to you whenever you want. Not just when you're playing Super Mario Wonder. Anytime. Kind of one of the other gitchy things that they threw into this Direct. No idea why they thought that was a big idea, but they are clearly doubling down on this flower thing. Like, they really, really want it to be a big part of the Mario universe, which is just so weird, because it's just so out of place, because obviously it talks. Mario doesn't even freaking talk. What the frick? Nobody talks. Why is this flower the only thing that gets to talk and then becomes like the voice of the Mario franchise? What the frick? Next, Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. I don't know. That just doesn't sound like a very intriguing title, to be quite frank. Another Yoshi-specific game, and it will likely be for babies. Also coming in spring 2026. We're going to go through a lot of spring 2026. It's very obvious these mother efforts are trying to get everything out before GTA, but it is a very cramped spring of 2026 you will continue to hear for Nintendo. No idea how they pump out this much stuff. Honestly, one of the most productive studios in the gaming industry, pumping out this much stuff and this much quality stuff. It's kind of insane. But like the footage they showed off how you can use dandelions to weaken and break rocks. Okay, all right, that sounds really underwhelming. I have played the last two Yoshi games, Yoshi's Crafted World and Yoshi's Woolly World. I played them with my wife. She likes to play Mario games with me. It's one of the few franchises that we can really get behind and play together. And even she was like, this is boring me. Like, and she is not like the best at games. So like when the difficulty is so low that even she is like, this is for freaking infants. Like we need to shove a controller into the womb in order to get somebody who is maybe age appropriate for this game to have a good time with it. It's I would almost say it's very similar to Kirby. I would say it's even lower level difficulty than Kirby. But Kirby is like, I used to like Kirby as a kid, and now like I tried to get back into Kirby as an adult, and I was like, oh my gosh, like these games are for infants. Like there's no fun to be had with these games. Like they are for babies. And there is nothing here that necessarily confirms that with Yoshi and the Mysterious Book, but based on the fact that the last two games that they made for Yoshi are for babies, and this one's big thing was you can use dandelions to help you break rocks, I do not have high hopes for this at all. I would say at the moment, an immediate skip for me. I saw nothing very intriguing within this trailer that showed that I should really pay attention to it, which is unfortunate because Yoshi, what the frick was the name of that game? Yoshi's first game, Yoshi's Island is like considered to be one of the best platformers ever. I've never played it, but like kind of weird how like they just decided to go in a totally different direction with Yoshi after making apparently one of the best platformers ever made. Next, we kind of transition away from Nintendo for a second. We go into Storm Lancers, which is actually a Nintendo Switch exclusive, which most of these third-party things or second-party things are not. But this is a Nintendo exclusive, and it's essentially a co-op Metroidvania roguelike. The reason I am brushing over that very quickly is because the footage I saw did not look interesting at all. It looked like any other indie Metroidvania co-op roguelike. Just throwing that out there. I feel like the main thing here is this has like, at least 75% of the buzzwords just in the descriptor itself of what like games sell right now. Like, well, we need a roguelike. Well, Metroidvanias are hot. Well, people want to play with their friends. Make it co-op. Like, okay. Like, I feel like I need more than just the buzzwords. Not intriguing to me at all based on the gameplay that I saw. Moving on. Dinkum, a cozy farming game. Where would we be? Where would we be in a Nintendo Direct without a cozy farming game? Dinkum was our honorary mention here for the cozy farming game category. Certainly not alone in this Direct, but very much the most cozy farming game-esque of the cozy farming games. Reminded me, basically, it was like, what if there was another Animal Crossing? As every cozy farming game does. Anyway, moving on. Poppucom. That's right, Poppucom. It's a puzzle platformer shooter that kind of reminds me of Bubble Bobble, which was, I thought, an interesting kind of take. You have basically a gun that shoots like you are playing with other players. Typically, it seems to be how the game's designed, is it's co-op. And, like you can maybe shoot purple and yellow, and the other guy can shoot green and red, or whatever the case is, just hypothetically. You can basically shoot two colors. Then you have obstacles and lasers and stuff that only can be interacted with your color. This is not necessarily like a new idea that I haven't seen in any other games before or, co-op ideals before. But it is interesting kind of seeing how it plays out. It did kind of look like a weirdly high budget, like almost extreme version of Bubble Bobble, which is just an interesting idea, I feel like. At the very least. Will I play this game? Absolutely not. I don't have friends. But, like, did it look kind of interesting? Like, I kind of respect the design behind it, not gonna lie. Next up, Tomodachi Life, coming out in spring 2026. That's kind of the main thing here. We've talked about Tomodachi Life before in the past when it was initially released. I will not be playing this game. The original Tomodachi Life was horrible. It's obvious that this game has made a lot of changes because the original Tomodachi Life was really just like a Street Pass game. Like, it was almost like a what do you call it? A Tamagotchi, which is kind of, I didn't ever put that together. Tomodachi and Tamagotchi. That's what the 90s things were that like exploded if you didn't feed them, right? And they couldn't poop, right? Like I never had one, but like I'm pretty sure that's what the frick they were. And Tamagotchi, I feel like somebody out there, if you're listening to me, I'm sorry. I am trying to pull depth into the deepest depths of my little infant brain, my nostalgia brain, and my 90s trivia. But anyway, I won't, subdue you to that anymore. Anyway, or subject you to that anymore. Yeesh. Tomodachi Life, this still doesn't look good. Like, or at least doesn't look for me. I should say that. I don't know if it's going to be bad, but it's certainly not for me. Moving on. They mentioned Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection. Who cares? We talked about it before at announcement. This is just a port of it. Something that is kind of notable that's a port was next, which is Final Fantasy VII Intergrade coming to Switch 2. January 22nd. They also went in, press afterwards and was like, oh yeah, and the whole trilogy is eventually coming to the Switch too. Just letting you know. This is kind of a big deal for a couple of reasons. Obviously, the original Final Fantasy VII Intergrade could not make it onto the Switch One because the Switch One is a weak, pathetic handheld console, and it cannot handle the super awesomeness of Final Fantasy VII Intergrade. So it never came. And then, of course, obviously, it was also, at the time, a PlayStation exclusive. And Square Enix has made a very staunch and hard turn into being multi-platform. So they are trying to bring every game to every platform now. And this is just obviously one of the first stops. So very interesting to me there. Next up is even more interesting. Hades 2. Releasing at 1.0 September 25th on both the Switch 1 and Switch 2. Hades, obviously mentioned earlier in the podcast, alongside Hollow Knight. It was one of the big indies that got a huge bump on the original Switch. This sequel has been in, very high anticipation for a very long time. And a lot of people didn't know if it was going to even make it in the calendar year. They thought, I assumed this was a Game Awards drop. I thought this was going to be shadow dropped at the Game Awards in December, or late November. I can't remember exactly when the Game Awards are. I actually think it's early November. But Hades 1 is a great game. A lot of people love it. I've heard Hades 2 has been in early access for a while now, and I've heard only fantastic things about it. I will definitely get around to playing Hades 2 eventually. It's one of the few roguelikes that I've been like, oh yeah, dude, I get it. Like, I want to play that. That's a great game. Really love the story, the writing, the presentation, the gameplay itself. Wish it wasn't a roguelike. Just in general, that's just like, it's just too time consuming to me if you're a roguelike. But like, Hades 2 is one I will easily make an exception for. The problem is, dude, this year is so jam-packed. September 25th, brother. That's 5 days before Final Fantasy Tactics Remake comes out. That's like a week before Ghosts of Yotei comes out. There's like 5 other games that come out like in that time frame that I'm actually looking forward to and want to play. Like, come on. Like, I don't have the time for this. I am so absolutely backlogged with my games right now, and there's so much coming out. The only thing that I can hope for is that all these games are just releasing right now because they're trying to get out before GTA, and what that means is 2026 is going to be barren. Like, we're going to have nothing to play for the vast majority of the year, which if that's the case, fantastic. I cannot wait to catch up on my backlog. Okay, French accent over. Next up, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. This game obviously needed a release date. That release date is November 6th. So a little bit, couple months, you'll be able to pick up Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment. Talked about it before, but it's a Dynasty Warriors clone. I think that these are the best Dynasty Warrior clones out there, but they're still Dynasty Warrior clones, and Dynasty Warrior clones are still like only fun for like 30 minutes. And then like you'll never want to touch them again. And there's like 80 billion hours of content in those games. So an obvious skip for me personally. Next up was Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. This is a release date of February 5th, 2026. This is, it kind of caught me off guard. So they're already doing Dragon Quest remasters, but with HD 2D graphics. Obviously, they did that with 3 last year, and later this year, they'll release Dragon Quest HD 2D 1 and 2, which is like, we will get to this later, but like for some reason people just really want to remaster things. They want to remaster like the freaking second game of a series first and then remaster the first one. That just seems to be a continuing pattern in the gaming industry in terms of remakes. But anyway, this one is not HD 2D. It is like completely. There's a reason it's called Reimagined. Is it was like 3D graphics with like 3D models using Akira Toriyama's art style, which obviously back in the day, Dragon Quest didn't have an art style. It was a pixel game, so like there was no art style to it. But like as the game series progressed, Akira Toriyama was tapped, which you may know as like the artist behind Dragon Ball Z, and the rest. He was tapped as like, will you do the art style for these games? And it's been that art style ever since. So like these models have now kind of been reimagined in that art style. They've given updates to some vocation mechanics, which I believe is a combat. Never played Dragon Quest VII. I've never played really any of them outside of 14. And I only played 14 for like 2 or 3 hours and was like, this is way too traditional JRPG for me. I do not need this in my life. But apparently now you can choose up to 2 vocations at once. I'm assuming that's a big deal for anybody who's played the game. And they've even streamlined the story, which the big problem for these games for me, Dragon Quest games, at least the most recent ones that have really scared me away from it, are these games are like intended to be 150 hours and like they are meant to be that long and meant to really be a slow kind of grind through it. And the reason that is because in Japan, where this series is very, very, very popular, they're not mint. I guess they are mint, but like most people play them like before they go to bed. Like they'll basically chew away on a Dragon Quest game for like a year. Like just like every night before they go to bed, they'll play an hour or so of Dragon Quest and like they'll just kind of unwind that way. And like that's kind of how the games are designed to be played. And to me, that's boring as frick. You know, like I don't want to play a freaking farming sim game for the exact same reason. You know, like a cozy farming sim or whatever. You know, like it's too boring. Like I wouldn't enjoy that time. I need a little bit more excitement in the games that I'm playing, or at least something a little bit more stimulating. And you know, like I don't know. Is Dragon Quest VII the like really the one everybody wanted to see? Because from my understanding, 3 is considered to be like the OG. So it's so interesting for them to like do 1 and 2, 3, and then skip 4, 5, and 6 and go to 7. Clearly, people didn't like 4, 5, and 6 very much. So, you know, I guess good for 7 to get this kind of treatment. But it's just, I don't know. I wish I knew more about the Dragon Quest series to really speak on that, but I don't. So I'm going to keep going. Next up was a wacky one. Virtual Boy games for the expansion pack, the Nintendo Online Subscription Service expansion pack. Wow. So here's the thing is, if you didn't know, the Virtual Boy is, I mean, you may think, oh, the Wii U, that's Nintendo's biggest flop. It's not. The Virtual Boy is considered Nintendo's biggest flop ever. It almost put the company out of business. It was a VR system before VR had any business to even be considered. It was made with like infrared. Everything was like red, and people reported basically having horrific headaches playing the games. They weren't fun. The peripheral didn't have very many games at all. I actually don't remember how many games the Virtual Boy ended up having, but 14 of the main ones will be added to the expansion pack over time, and you can experience them on your Switch or Switch 2, which is nutty. It's nutty that they're doing that. I appreciate that from a game preservation standpoint, but here's the real nutty part, okay? So obviously you needed a peripheral originally when playing these games, because it would be, you know, it would be kind of like looking at a 3D image, or that was the intent, because you had like a headset with goggles. And so it's like, okay, well, how do you get the full experience? Well, you can buy the Virtual Boy accessory for the Switch and Switch 2, which you can slot your Switch into and then play the games. Holy guacamole. that's just kind of nutty that Nintendo did that. Here's the real kicker. There's two versions you can get. You can get the actual Virtual Boy accessory, which looks just like the original, or you can get a cardboard version, kind of like the Labo, where you get to make it yourself and you kind of construct it, and then you can slide your Switch into it and use it in the same way you would the regular Virtual Boy accessory made out of plastic. The regular Virtual Boy accessory, in which all it is just kind of like the peripheral that looks like the Virtual Boy and like basically two lenses and the place to slot your freaking Switch in, is $100 US. Yikes. Even more, I find this to be even more egregious. Like, okay, that's a very niche thing. Most people aren't going to really want that. It's really for collectors. You know, if you want to shell out that much money for that, it is what it is. Okay, Nintendo is giving us a cheaper alternative. It's a piece of cardboard that I have to construct myself. How much could that be? 5, 10, 15 US? Surely. Maybe I'll invest in that and I can play the games that way. The cardboard version is 25 US for a piece of cardboard that you have to construct yourself. It is $25. It is a quarter of the price of the actual like manufactured plastic replica version of the original hardware. Oh my gosh, like that's just so egregious. This is again like one of the scummy things. I think a lot of people aren't focusing on this because it's like, oh, well, who gives a frick about the Virtual Boy? Like, you know, like, these games suck anyway. You know, the fact that they're even just available is kind of quirky, and I guess something that's fine to add to the list of having, you know, your expansion pack membership for. And, you know, like it gives more value to the expansion pack memberships, really. And it's like, yeah, that's fair, but like, I don't know. This just feels like, obviously, that's just a little much, right? That's just a little much. You know, February 14th. If you always wanted to go back and experience these games, go for it. I actually have a funny story about that. I actually used a Virtual Boy once at a thrift store when I was a kid. My parents would take me to the thrift store all the time. Like if I did something good, they'd like take me to the thrift store and I'd like, you could get like a McDonald's toy for like a quarter or something like that. You know, like a used McDonald's toy. And like they'd be like, oh yeah, go through the toys and pick one out. And, you know, as a reward for a good boy like myself. And at one time I remember walking around the store and there was a Virtual Boy. And at the time I actually knew what a Virtual Boy was, and I knew that it was a massive failure, and it didn't work. I don't think it worked. It was either out of batteries or it was just broken. But somebody had given away their Virtual Boy to the thrift store. They donated it, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy! I've never seen one of these ever. Like, oh my gosh!" And I tried to use it, and it didn't work. But like, it was still crazy that I even got to see an original Virtual Boy out in the wild. I'm actually kind of curious what like a functioning one costs nowadays. But anyway, it's just cool. I do think about that every time I hear about the Virtual Boy. It's just a fun little story. Anyway, Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake. This is another long line of remakes that for some reason skip the original title and just go straight into fully remaking the second game that people think is better. So Fatal Frame, if you didn't know, is a Japanese horror game. I've heard it is one of the scariest games ever. Fatal Frame 2 is known for being the scariest out of the whole series. It is a game where you're playing as like a Japanese schoolgirl and you're running through like old Japanese buildings, and you have a camera that can defeat ghosts. And so like the real horror of the game comes from like you can't see or defend yourself unless you're looking through this first person camera view. So like the rest of the game is in a third person camera, and then like if you want to like get into a fight or like look around or something, you have to pull up the camera and zoom way in, and it just like leads to a lot of jump scares essentially. Like not like jump scares like you're used to, like a Five Nights at Freddy thing, but like a procedural almost jump scare that like is just kind of what happens in accordance to gameplay at that particular moment. It's also just known to be incredibly freaking scary, very, very scary game. I will probably not be playing it because it's so scary. I don't know. That night, if I'm gonna play a scary game, there's so many scary games out there that's like $5. It's like I bet you this is gonna be a full price title, and I'd much rather wait for this game to be down super low in price. But very cool to continue to see Fatal Frame get any kind of recognition at all. It's one of those series that like I'll kind of hear brought up every once in a while, but like it really did kind of teeter off. Just a few of the games later in the series just weren't very good. They probably moved over to a different studio, and it just never really rebounded from that. But it used to be a really successful cult classic horror game. So very cool to see that continue to get some love. And also just looks like a pretty good remaster in general. Like or remake. Like it's clearly ground up. It looks really good from what I remember the original being. Next up, One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 for the Switch 2. There's a lot of games here that are, and I knew this was going to be the case coming in. Honestly, less games talked about this than I assumed, but a lot of games that were on the Switch 1 are going to come to the Switch 2, obviously. This is a free upgrade to the Switch 2 if you have a Switch 1. Apparently, it is the big thing here was the original Switch 1 game is like basically gimped. It's not a very good version of the game because the Switch is so weak that it's a Dynasty Warriors clone, essentially, if you didn't know. And that means there's going to be a lot of enemies at one time on the screen, and the Switch couldn't handle it. So they had to decrease the number of enemies that were on the Switch versions in order for it to run. So like now, the Switch 2 version can do the same thing that anybody else who's played the game a long time ago. I mean, this game came out years ago. Has been playing for years or played years ago. So 2 thumbs way up for anybody who is that dedicated to Nintendo's platform that, they're like, yeah, dude, I will play the worst version of the games, outside of Nintendo games on this console. Overcooked 2 did something very similar, also coming to the Switch. Their big thing is they're going to add camera support, which, anybody remember that? This Switch 2 has camera support. There is a peripheral that is a camera that is available for the Switch 2 if you would like it. Almost kind of reminds me of when the PlayStation 4 launched, and it was like there was a camera that you could buy for it that was, admittedly, that was super hard to get. But it was like, why the frick? No one ever needed it. Like, it was never a requirement for any game or an add-on for any game to have that freaking camera. And I don't think that this camera that the Nintendo Switch has been attached to so heavily. Oh, and who can forget the Kinect? Another camera that was ham-fisted into a platform for so long. But like this is another one. And it's like, okay, we have Super Mario Party Jamboree, and I think that's like it that used the camera. And I don't even think people like Super Mario Jamboree that much. And then, then you have this. It's like, well, you can see the reactions of people getting mad at you in Overcooked 2. I don't know if I really want to see that. It's one thing if they're mad at me if we're like competing. I'm like, ha ha ha, I'm very good, and therefore they're angry. But it's like very different when we're working together and they're mad at me. Like that's a little bit different, and that's what Overcooked is. So I don't know. Like, yeah, would it be fun? Sure, but like, also, I would highly encourage you to play Overcooked just freaking couch co-op. Ruin your marriage that way. Next up, Stardew Valley for the Switch 2. It's the same thing, but they added mouse controls. I would say that's a very nice inclusion. I'm still a little wavering on it. Mouse controls in general for the Switch 2. I had an okay time with them playing Welcome Party, and then I had a really horrific time playing, what the frick is that wheelchair basketball game? Like, I can't remember. Drive X Drift. I can't remember what the frick it's called, but the wheelchair basketball game for the Switch 2 that got horrible reviews. Like I had such a horrific time, and then I have heard multiple people say the mouse controls in Metroid Prime 4 are actually pretty good based on initial first impressions. So it's like, okay, I mean, I guess, like that's, I guess, like it seems to vary. I think I would probably just prefer to not. I'm comfortable enough with a controller. If I really want to play a game with mouse controller, just play the game on a PC. But for people who are dedicated to the Switch and really wanted mouse controls, I think Stardew Valley would benefit from them. So I get it. Moving on. Human Fall Flat for the Switch 2, they're adding 2 new levels. I think that's probably the most substantial improvement or increase in content for these Switch 2 ports. It's very kind of them to even do that. Seems like most people were pretty cool with just like, yeah, I'll just port my game for basically just full price. Not most people, I'm assuming, are giving free updates. Not everybody said that in these releases, but I'm assuming most people, if you have the game already, you'll be able to just upgrade for free. But Human Fall Flat is seemingly going to be full price because they're adding new content, but I don't know that. Power Wash Simulator is just coming to the Switch 2. That's cool. Suika Game Planet. If you haven't heard of Suika Game, you don't watch very many VTubers. A viral sensation the original Suika game was. It's a puzzle physics game where you try to match fruits, and if you match the corresponding fruits, they become a bigger fruit and kind of merge together. It was very popular on YouTube streaming for a while. It was only like $5. I think it was less than $5. So its price point was very appealing for a lot of people. But a lot of people got really into that game, and now they've made a sequel. But this time it's like round. So now you can kind of drop fruit from anywhere within a 360 plane, which is an interesting twist, I will admit. I kind of just expected more of the same from them moving forward. So kind of cool to actually see them try to do something a little bit different with it. And just also interesting that this had a spot in a Nintendo Direct. That's just kind of funny. Next up was Metroid Prime 4. One of the big things I think people were looking forward to this conference, or I keep saying conference, I'm sorry. Steeped in my old ways, my E3 nostalgia days. This Direct was a release date for Metroid Prime. People were assuming at this point it had a possibility of slipping, and it almost did, because it's coming out December 4th. One thing that they showed off here, which, by the way, they haven't showed off much, clearly, even still, but clearly I think that they're going to have a Nintendo Direct exclusively for this game at some point, and you're going to be learning a lot about it, because even though this game comes out in less than 3 months, we know very, very little about it. The tidbit we got this time is there's a motorcycle, and there's kind of like open world elements. Okay. I am of the opinion that Metroid Prime is overrated. I played Metroid, the remake that came out on Switch a few years back, and it's like a 93 on Metacritic. The remake is, like, even people re-reviewing the game, like, these are not original reviews. Like, today, modern standards, it still has a 93. I did not get that. I was like, I guess for a game that came out like 20 years ago, yeah, this is a pretty solid title. Like, this is a really solid title. Is it perfect? No. Did, like, the second half or the last third of the game get really, like, backtracky and, like, not super fun? Yeah. Is the shooting, like, by modern standards very engaging and fun? No. Like, is the Metroid parts of, like, is the Metroidvania style elements of this game, like, some of the best I've ever seen? I mean, no, I've definitely seen better. So it's like, okay, like, where are we getting this 93 from? Like, I don't know. There are definitely some good elements of Metroid Prime. I love the vibe. I love the world of Metroid Prime. But that changes from game to game, which, by the way, where is Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remake? I thought that was like a shoo-in, which we're going to get to that in a second, too. There's another one that kind of does something similar here. Another game that did something similar here that I didn't understand. But, like, why did we not have Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remake available to kind of even build even more hype up? I feel like this was the time, like, shadow drop 2 and 3 right now. Give people 3 months to play those games, which I don't think is honestly enough time based on how many games are coming out right now. But like shadow drop those and you're good to go. Now, I think people are going to be a lot less inclined to want to do that once they play 4, because they're like, unless, you know, like why would I really want to go back and play 2 and 3? I've played 4. You know, like I don't need to gear up for this game. I think a lot of people like doing that. They like kind of having like, okay, I'm going to play all the previous games of this series before. I don't have the freaking time for that, but some people do, and they say, I'm going to play all the games that came out before this game to get ready for this game's release. And like a lot of people do that with Hollow Knight. They play, like, Hollow Knight had its highest concurrent player count like a week or so before Silksong came out, because everybody was trying to play that game to get ready for Silksong. So, you know, like, I don't know why didn't we do that? I don't know. But, like, am I super hyped for Metroid Prime? No. Do I think it will probably review super well and be probably a really good game? Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So we'll see. Don't know yet. This game has been through a lot in terms of its development. A lot of probably very bad things. But most people don't seem to be too down on this game at the moment. They seem to be pretty optimistic. So I'll see. There's been a lot of people who've played it hands-on as well, and I haven't heard anything horrible yet. But I think people are really trying to wait to see the final product, because nothing I've seen yet has very much impressed me at all, including this like motorcycle footage. It's very minimal. You don't learn that much about the game or the mechanic with it at all. But like, again, I reserve any final thoughts on this game until I see the direct for it, to think if this game is going to be good or bad. Like right now, I have no idea what this game is, to be quite frank. Like nothing that I've seen so far has made me excited about it, other than the fact that it's just another Metroid Prime game. And like, I didn't really care that much about Metroid Prime. So like, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm a Debbie Downer. Don't listen to me. I'm just a guy on a video game podcast. Next up, Donkey Kong Bonanza's getting some DLC, an interesting DLC, a roguelike mode. Also a new area based on, you know, DK Island, which is nice. But like that area just seems to be kind of the initial area for this particular mode. You're going to essentially have a time limit to collect X amount of resources. And as you go along, you'll be able to pick up power-ups that are randomly assigned, and you get to choose the power-up, and it will help you collect more resources. And, you know, like at each run, you're progressively going to try and get a higher and higher score. Sounds cool. I think I have said many times, I don't like roguelike modes, because all they are is just like an infinite time sink. And I don't need that. I need a finite goal, and I need something that doesn't make me repeat the same thing over and over again in order to achieve that goal. So, you know, like, roguelike, cool, for people who want that, but I don't want that. So, like, for $20, I don't give a frick. Cool for you if you want to engage with that, but that's not for me. So we're really hoping, if you're going to do DLC for this game, just giving me a whole nother area, like, of actual platforming, and like, you know, maybe some more cool boss fights, something like that. Even though the boss fights in that game kind of suck, but you know, it is what it is. Demo also out today for it, alongside the DLC. You can get it right now. So go ahead, try it out. Next up was Pokemon Pokopia. Had to kind of think about that one as I read it out. It's basically an Animal Crossing clone. You play as a Ditto who turns into a human and then kind of uses Pokemon powers to like grow grass and tomatoes and water them and like remove rocks from the area and you like chill with your Bulbasaur and Charmander around the fire. Not for me. This is going to be made by Game Freak and Koei Tecmo. Game Freak doing a little bit more recently than just, Pokemon or traditional Pokemon. But like, this is not something I see as a particularly interesting game. People are looking forward to like the Souls-like that Game Freak is making. I don't trust Game Freak at all with anything. Everything to me that they've ever made has been shoddy. Even though let's be real, Pokemon has the magic to it. I don't know how much of that is Game Freak's responsibility as much as it is the IP itself. Speaking of which, we had some information on Pokemon Z to A coming out in just a month or so. I think October 16th. 4 new Mega Evolutions were shown off. Apparently, people really like Mega Evolutions. They've been doling them out over time. I don't care about it. I don't care about Pokemon. I am a very casual enjoyer of Pokemon. I dipped out of Pokemon for a long time. Came back with Sword and Shield. I loved Sword and Shield to a point of I went back and I played multiple other Pokemon games and kind of OD'd myself and was like, okay, yeah, some Pokemon entries are clearly better than others. I don't really need any more of this. I'll kind of casually appreciate it when a game comes out, and that's it. Played Arceus, thought that game was mid as frick. And like it seems like Z to A is kind of going to be in the same vein of that. It feels like this game is just like, why didn't this game come out at least a decade and a half, if not 2 decades ago? Like, I feel like this was the obvious thing to do, was make like real world, like live action Pokemon fights that you're interacting with in like an action style. Like, that just turn-based just seemed a little, confined, I guess is a good word. But I don't know. I'm still going to play it. I'm hoping it will be good. But I again hold reservations for it. And here's scummy thing number 3 of the Direct. They also announced DLC for the game, Mega Dimensions, starring Raichu X and Raichu Y. This is already scheduled. You can already pre-order it. It's already done. It will not be available at launch. But like, it's what the frick? Like why are you announcing DLC for a game before the game is even out? Obviously that is, you should just make it a part of the game. I think that's the obvious answer, right? Is like, well, if you've made content for the game and it is done, the whole historic purpose of DLC was you would make a game and then you'd finish the game and then you would make more of the game and then you would release that DLC. And the reason that you couldn't the reason it was released later was because you had already released the game. You couldn't put it on a disc anymore. It was already out. So you had to sell it as a separate sellable or, like downloadable, as the D would imply, item. And that's why DLC is DLC, And obviously, if you just already have content that's feature complete and ready to go out, shouldn't you just put that on the disc and just give it to the player? It means that you intentionally developed this content with the idea of making it a completely separate purchase, which, by the way, it is not cheap DLC. It is $30. And I don't even want to get in. I have a friend who's really into Pokemon, and it baffles me. I mean, when I say he's into Pokemon, he's really into Pokemon. And I'm like, I can't imagine being a Pokemon fan and not feeling insulted, like, on a regular basis. A regular basis. I just feel like, like, why, Pokemon? Why are you still making 2 versions of your mainline game? Wasn't the only reason that you had 2 versions initially because the hardware could not fit all 150 Pokemon on one cartridge? Yeah, well, we still do that because it just gets hardcore fans to buy 2 full-price games just so they can catch all the Pokemon. Oh, well, that's kind of effed up. That's a little effed up. Don't you think, Pokemon? I mean, like, they do this bullcrap all the time. Oh, you are not one of, you are the highest grossing IP of all time. Why are you still putting out garbage, like, flawed games? Wasn't the last game, I don't remember the last game that came out. I can't even remember the last game that came out. It was not good, though. It was broken to frick. It was super broken. And it was like, well, I guess they didn't have the money. Like the most profitable IP ever in existence didn't have the money for one of their mainline titles to be well made. Like, that just doesn't compute. Like, it's obvious that they just cut corners or they're not good at their freaking job, and like, they just put out a product to a bunch of hardcore consumers that they knew were going to buy it anyway. And like, that just is so scummy. Like, again, I don't know how you are a hardcore Pokemon fan and do not feel like they are spitting on you and telling you it's raining. Like that's just the vibe I get from Pokemon all the time. And, I'll be playing the game. So, I know I just said, like, oh, I don't know how excited I am for Metroid Prime and Pokemon Z to A. I'm a casual enjoyer of it, and I think if it's a good game, I'll play it for sure. But, like, the trick I've gotten here is the Nintendo Game Passes, or game vouchers. So you can buy 2 of them for $100, and you can get the Switch 1 versions of these games, which are $60, for $50, basically, is what it would amount to, if you're accounting for it. And then you can upgrade it for $10. So really, you're saving yourself $10 on these games each, and more specifically, these games will never go down in price. Like, they will never drop in price. They will be $60, $70 for the end of time, because that's how Nintendo does things, because they're insane. And that's pretty much, if you have any opportunity to save on these games, you should take it. So that's why I'll be playing them. But like, because I got a discount on them, and might as well just go ahead and pick them up. But like, because they're never going to go down in price. But it's like, I don't know. It's hard for me to look at this and be like, yeah, that's the right way of doing it. Like, there's no way you can do that. I'm a casual fan, so like, it is possible for them to turn me off. Like, I walked away from the series for like a decade and a half, so like, I am happy to do it again. Like, I'm not committed to this franchise at all, but it is hard to avoid, and it is one of the biggest games every year whenever it comes out. So, as a hardcore gamer, I tend to try to, get my hands on those. So, anyways, moving on. Next was a game that piqued my interest quite a bit, but not really. We'll get into why. Danganronpa 2 times 2. Danganronpa 2 being basically put out again. This is another in a long line of like, why didn't you just remake the first one? This is particularly egregious because it's a sequel that like does have canonical like crossover from the first game that like you'll probably be fairly confused if you don't have that information. I'm a big fan of Danganronpa. I've played all of the games except for that game that's like a summer sim game where like all the characters are in swimsuits and it really has nothing to do with anything within the universe. But like every other Danganronpa game I've played, and I've enjoyed them all. Danganronpa 2 is actually, I'd probably say is my favorite. Really love the story. Like, the overall experience of 1 is really good. The vibe and like just everything that goes on in that game, really enjoyed it. 2 has the highest moments, I'd say. It has the best payoffs. It has some of the better characters, and really, really it's probably my favorite, if not one of my favorite visual novels ever. And I would highly recommend it if it looks like something you're interested in. Give it a shot, especially if you don't mind reading a lot. But like, why they decided to go ahead and just go with 2, I don't know. Here's the sell. Why would you buy just Danganronpa 2 again? I guess not just why not just remake the freaking first game too? Don't know. But why would you do that? Because it contains a completely new scenario where new people die and there are new culprits as well for who killed them. I don't know how this will work. How do you do that? I would assume the only way you can do this and not completely so if you didn't know, Danganronpa is a death game visual novel. Every chapter another character dies, and one of the characters that's in your kind of catalog of cast is responsible for the murder, and you have to figure out who did it. So as the game progresses, you have a dwindling cast of characters that are now being killed off or, like being murderers or something along those lines. It's a very interesting concept. It's very fun to play through, and I think that's a large part of why. But like, if you do that, if you somehow insert a new scenario in which a character dies out of sequence or dies before they're supposed to or something like that, you completely F up the rest of the game. So all I can imagine is this has to be a standalone thing that you're doing completely separated from the main story. And at that point, that's just freaking fan fiction. It has nothing to do with the overall story, and that is what makes these murders so heavy and so consequential within the game, is because you just lost one of the people for the rest of the game. Like, that character is no longer going to be there, and they may be your favorite character, they may be your best friend in the game, who knows? So, like, you obviously, it's a huge gut punch every time anyone dies. So it doesn't, I wouldn't give a frick if it's like a completely standalone thing, there's no weight to that. If it's just like, well, it doesn't really matter. It's just basically a whodunit. It's like, okay, well, that's not really what makes Danganronpa good. Like, what makes Danganronpa good is like the through line narrative of like, well, now this character's gone forever, kind of deal. So really unfortunate. I mean, we don't have confirmation of that, if that's the case, but like, it just seems like a weird thing to do. Like, why do this? Why do this? I wouldn't even think that the original creator is involved in the new scenario, because he's working on so much bullcrap right now. He's got like freaking 4 games coming out or something like that. Like Shoots in Order just came out, pretty much bombed. I don't think anybody bought that game. I don't think anybody reviewed that game very well either. 100 Line Defense Academy obviously came out recently. He just had that live service game completely fail. Like, there's no way he was working on this too. So like, I don't trust it as far as I can throw it. Is it a reason to go back and replay Danganronpa? Sure. But unless this game is like fully voiced, or like there's been massive enhancements to it, like, which nothing so far I've seen, again, this is very recent after the direct, but nothing I've seen so far has relatively come close to indicating that. So as a huge Danganronpa fan, this just seems odd. It just seems like an odd thing to do. Why just re-release the second one? Why give us this new content when it seems like it has nothing to do with anything? Like, I just feel like there were better ways of handling this. Not that I'm like upset. Like, honestly, they could have just put the game out again and been like, yeah, you can play Danganronpa 2 again. We just kind of upgraded it. And I'd be like, I'll consider it when it's on a deep sale. Like, give me another reason to go back through and get trophies or something, and like, maybe that's worth it for me. But like, this just seems like an odd way of approaching it. So it is what it is. Moving on. Dynasty Warriors Origins. It's just the same kind of deal as, the One Piece Warriors game. This Switch 2 can now handle a Dynasty Warriors game. Moving on, Monster Hunter Stories Twisted Reflection. Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection. Coming out March 13th. Talked about this game before. It's basically Pokemon with Monster Hunter. Big JRPG kind of deal. I'm not interested in it because I'm not even interested in really Monster Hunter. But Monster Hunter Stories is really like kind of a gateway drug for Monster Hunter. That's really what it's supposed to be. But not interested. Moving on, they had a partner sizzle reel. I'll run through that real quick. 2 Point Museum, Disgaea 7, EA Sports FC 26, Dragon Quest HD 1 and 2 Remake, Virtua Fighter 5, Lego Voyagers, Little Nightmares 3, and Persona 3 Reload. Not much to say about any of these. They're not very interesting. Next up, or they're really just, ports, essentially. Games that are coming to everything, but hey, they're also coming here. So just FYI. Next up, Resident Evil Requiem, coming to the Switch 2, February 27th. The same as everywhere else. This is just another one of the long line of marketing beats that I think this game is trying to hit. Here's the problem. Resident Evil 7 and 8 are also coming, and they're coming February 27th. If that sounded odd to you, because you assumed, hey, why wouldn't you release them before that so that people would buy them and play them before that to kind of get hyped or ready for Resident Evil 9? I kind of thought the same thing. That's another instance of why are we not going ahead and doing that? That just seems like we should just kind of capitalize on the momentum that could encourage. I feel like a lot of people would rather play those games before playing it, not after. And I think most people would rather play Resident Evil 9 before they play Resident Evil 7 and 8 if it's out at the exact same time, because it's the newest one. So, it would be the one everybody would be talking about. So, it is what it is. Next up was their showstopper. Their last one out was Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave. It is the new mainline Fire Emblem game coming to Switch in 2026. So they confirmed a year. This is something people have been kind of speculating for a while. That we kind of know that Nintendo has had some Switch brewing, some Fire Emblem in the background. A lot of people thought it was a remake of an older game, and a lot of people thought it was this. Seemed more likely to be the remake, personally. But Fire Emblem, hey, it's the new one. So here it is. We really don't know that much about it. It seems to be a direct sequel to Four Houses, and it seems to be, based on the press release I saw, obviously a Colosseum battle royale kind of story. Everybody's fighting to win this tournament, and they get a wish from the ruler of the land if they win it. There's some obvious direct correlation between Three Houses and this game. The kind of mystical, magical character with green hair that I cannot remember the name of from Three Houses. She's at the very end of the trailer, kind of notating the direct through line. Really enjoyed Three Houses. I think Fire Emblem Three Houses has a lot of grinding in it. A little bit more content than I really would have wanted. So, these games in terms of length are a little bit daunting. Still in not probably the best strategy tactics games I've ever played. There are others that I prefer, but the story and the characters and the overall kind of loop for Fire Emblem Three Houses I found to be very good. So I really enjoyed that game. So I'll be keeping an eye on Fortune's Weave. I think it'll do even better than Three Houses. It's a shame we're abandoning the Three Houses motif. I really expected them to do something like that. Instead of Three Houses, it would maybe be Three Kingdoms or something like that, kind of an evolution of that. They can do whatever they want, obviously. But, I think this is an interesting take as well. The Colosseum Battle Royale, I like it. Sounds fun, sounds interesting. I'm interested to see how that kind of translates from what I am used to. Because really, Three Houses was my first mainline Fire Emblem game I ever played. So I'm not very familiar with the series overall. So interested to see what they do with this one. We don't know much, and we probably won't know much more for a while. And that wraps it up for the Nintendo Direct. Very good Nintendo Direct. Really hit a lot. Like I said at the beginning, I was really expecting this to just be a marketing push for a lot of games. Just, kind of, we have to get this out here. Let's just push it on through. Like kind of like a sizzle reel that I just read out, but like for an hour. And unfortunately, that was not the case. A lot of varied games here. I'm really excited for Super Mario Galaxy. Probably won't be playing that immediately, but like very glad to finally have access to it. Obviously, the Fire Emblem was like the big drop. We got release dates for all the games that I think we really needed to see. To me, I think this is like what you want from a Direct. This is what you kind of expect. Kind of the 40th anniversary stuff where you get kind of a crumb of new Mario game content, which is what we got. Obviously the release dates, like I said, and then like that big splash for a new game in 2026 to look forward to. And I think we got it. So like this was what I really wanted. My expectations were low, but they ended up being met and more. I think this was not like the best Direct in the world, but like it did exactly what it needed to, which a lot of these Directs, not just Nintendo, but like Sony and Microsoft and really everybody falter with a lot. So like this is a solid B. And to me, a solid B, maybe even a B plus, is like really quite good. Like I think, like it sounds harsh to be like this is a B, but like that just means like you did a good job. And I think that this is a really good job. I mean, I feel like I've been pretty down on a lot of the Directs and conferences people have been having recently. So to have like even a good impression, maybe not a great, but like a good impression of a Direct, I think is really a solid sign of approval. Absolutely. So that's all I have to say about that. And that is it for the news. And away we go and into impressions. This is a pretty sparse segment, this show. I have been very, very busy, much busier than I would have assumed, and I think I mentioned in the last episode, I have been very, very slowly making my way through Metaphor Refantasio, an 80-hour game, which I don't think I'll hit 80 hours on for various reasons I'll get into when I talk about that game, but it has really monopolized my time, the very little time I've had to play games recently. Just a lot going on in life that I'm having to put that time into, unfortunately. But that being said, I'm pulling back out from the recesses of my gaming pastimes, and I am presenting you with Rift of the Necrodancer. Rift of the Necrodancer comes from a studio that I think I have an interesting journey with, and I think I have an interesting journey with this game. So I have played a little bit of Crypt of the Necrodancer, which is the first game in this series. It's a roguelike rhythm game. I really do love the idea of rhythm games. I'm not a very big music junkie in my normal life, but I think that rhythm games are a very specific and interesting kind of game genre that can do something that a lot of games can't, and that's put you into a flow state. Something about the rhythm and the music can, in conjunction with, you physically interacting with it, and it can be kind of mesmerizing and really rewarding and just an interesting experience I don't think you can get from any other genre. And when I find a music game that I really resonate with, it really is a magical thing, and it really is a powerful thing. Beat Saber is like the end all. Honestly, if you told me you have to play one game for the rest of your life, it would probably, for me, be Beat Saber. Like, it is one of those forever games that I can go back to, every couple of months or every month. And like that is a really tough ask for me for any game because I have so many games to play and so much I would like to get to that saying I would go back to a game ever is such a massive compliment. So me saying like I would go back to, I still go back to Beat Saber. I mean, like I have a MetaQuest and it's basically just a Beat Saber machine. And honestly, a worthwhile investment even for that. But that being all to say, I did not really get into Crypt of the Necrodancer very much. I'm not a big roguelike guy, as I've said probably like 5 times in this episode. And, like I played a few runs of it and I was like, okay, yeah, I'm good. I get the idea. It's an interesting concept for a game. Moving on. They then had access to somehow get a hold of Nintendo's Zelda, Legend of Zelda IP, and they essentially made a Crypt of the Necrodancer, but with Zelda. And it is also technically a roguelike, but it is using remix tracks from The Legend of Zelda, which I love the Legend of Zelda soundtrack, and it is actually like a full adventure mode. The thing about it is technically it still is a roguelike. You can go back and rerun it, and some things are kind of changed around so that each run is technically unique and different, but like you can play that game and beat it in like 3 hours your first time through and just treat it like a regular video game. I think that game is great. Like I really, really enjoyed it for everything I just said about it. It kind of avoids, what I think is often a fatal flaw of rhythm games, which is having a soundtrack that you just don't gel with because music is so subjective, and having even though it was technically a roguelike, you could easily treat each run as a standalone single-player campaign, which most roguelikes you cannot do. Like, you cannot beat a roguelike in one run. Like, it's just not something that's possible a vast majority of the time, at least for a first-time player. And Rift of the Necrodancer is designed that way. Really, all you're doing is just having, you're trying to beat your time, kind of beating the game over and over and over again. Anyway, long tangent to say, Rift of the Necrodancer was a pretty far departure. Well, in a way. It's an interesting one because it's a traditional rhythm game. It's not a dungeon crawling rhythm roguelike. It is a traditional DDR-esque rhythm game. And this is like one of the things that I found interesting is like, this is from this developer and from this team. It's unexpected, but at the same time kind of makes sense and is also kind of expected in a way. I saw trailers for this and I was like, I like the soundtrack for these games. I really like the Zelda spinoff they did. And this game looks like it has really good production values. And then it had like these Rhythm Heaven mini games in the trailer that I thought looked fun. I really like Rhythm Heaven. So like I was like, this has potential to be really good. Like I'm looking forward to this. I ran through the single player campaign since that's all I was really interested in. And, I had a lot of ups and downs with this single player campaign. And I'm going to get into it because I think it's really obvious for anybody who's even touched this game to know where I'm about to go with this. But, I originally played the demo for this game because I was really looking forward to it. And I was like, okay, tried out the demo. And I was like, this game is not for me. I was like, I don't like this. It was way too hard. I was like, how the frick am I supposed to enjoy myself? This is way too frickin' hard. And then they eventually released HoloLive DLC. I'm a big HoloLive fan, and I was like, absolutely, I'm going to pick this up. I want to see what the HoloLive DLC is all about. And it's all of the content in this game is fairly high quality, so was totally worth it. It was on a sale, and I got the DLC for a sale too, so got it for relatively cheap, maybe like $15 total. So, for what I paid, I think I got my money's worth, no doubt. But the game's story is about 3 to 4 hours long, maybe 4 to 5, depending on how long you take, how many times you have to redo songs. But it focuses on the cast of Crypt of the Necrodancer. And they've all been transported into the real world, and they've become hipsters for some reason, because this was an indie developer, I guess, that made it, and that's just how they roll. But they have to stop evil from spreading through the world through rhythm rifts, which take place as regular tracks like you play in any other rhythm game. So, you kind of go through the story and have to help people with problems by completing songs and defeating these enemies that are coming in and causing bad vibes in the town, essentially, or the world, whatever. The story sucks. It's incredibly boring. Characters were uninteresting, and I checked out pretty early on. I skimmed the rest of it pretty much like after maybe the first couple of text, like chapter text sequences. I was like, yeah, I don't need this. This is definitely not good. I'm just gonna keep going, and it's really easy to skip through all of that and just get to the meat, which is obviously the rhythm game, pretty easily. So you can check out, and you're gonna be okay for the most part. What wasn't easy to do were the tracks themselves. In my notes, I even write out, holy smokes, because this game is really freaking hard. I am a firm believer that most rhythm games have an inherent learning curve. Like every rhythm game, you don't know the tracks, and most of what you're going to do is react to things with muscle memory, essentially. That's where the challenge of every rhythm game kind of comes from, is you start off, and most rhythm games have really simple mechanics. In DDR, which is the rhythm game everybody can kind of reference, everybody's seen DDR. You have 4 things: up, down, left, and right. When an up arrow reaches the up point, you press it. Same thing for left, right, and down. That's just easy. It's so easy to understand. You have long notes, you just hold it. It's easy to understand. Nobody really struggles with understanding DDR. They struggle with the memory and the reacting quickly to these notes. So mechanics are very simple, but the learning curve is difficult because of that. That's not how Rift of the Necrodancer works. I feel like most rhythm games, you start off on easy, you then go to normal, you then go to hard. At least for me. That's how I play rhythm games. Maybe a rhythm game junkie, you don't have to do that. But for somebody who's not a rhythm game junkie like me, I have to normally start off on easy to kind of get a feel for a song and to kind of understand what notes are going to be coming and stuff like that. Then I move up to normal as I get more comfortable. And that just is typically the progression, and it kind of makes sense for these games because you want to get multiple plays out of these songs. If you just run through an entire rhythm game's tracks, you'll be done in a couple of hours, and really rhythm games aren't worth it at that point. You have to have this inherent jump in difficulty in trying to master each song at higher levels in order to really get an extended amount of play out of these titles, right? So, back to this game doesn't do that. It has a massive learning curve that you have to get through in order to even start interacting with the notes that are coming at you. So I have to write all this down because I could not remember it even if I wanted to. So there's about 15 different note types. So like I was just saying, for DDR, you have up, down, left, right. So there's 4. So there's 4. In this, there's 15. And each one has several different ways in which it can be altered, and you have to juggle all of this, throughout the 4 to 5 hours that the game tries to introduce you to these things slowly over the course of the campaign, which is just way too freaking much. Each note is represented by an enemy from the game. So, there's slimes in the original Crypt of the Necrodancer, and so, the main kind of base note that you're going to be hitting is the slime, which is just represented as one hit. You just hit the button once. And then, a skeleton, which is 2 hits. And then some enemies are like bats, which you hit once, and then they'll move to another side, and you have to hit them again. So you need to react to these notes as they come. Here are the different varieties that I've written down of the notes, and these are not even all of the notes, mind you. You have normal single hits, double hits. Some spawn other notes that need to be hit after them. Some spawn notes that spawn in 2 different places that need to be hit after them. You have to be aware of the direction the note is facing to know which way the alternative notes will spawn after you hit them. Some notes move at twice the speed. Some notes they transport halfway down the track, so you have to adapt quickly to hit them. Some require a double hit on the beat itself. Some require a triple hit on the beat itself. So there are different symbols that denote different hits for both double and triple. Some require multiple hits and move to a different lane each time. So like you'll hit it and it'll go from one lane to the left lane to the right lane and back again. Some require multiple hits that will move Some are given different buffs and how they'll normally interact. So it'll maybe increase their speed or something like that, or slow them down. Some are the same types but look different, so they'll have like a different color variation, and based on the color that they are, it will change the amount of times they need to be hit. Some have traps that that will be on the track itself that will then change the positioning, and then the speed and the toughness and stuff like that as enemies pass over them. And that's just what I took freaking notes on. If you got lost in that, if your eyes glazed over, if you said, what the frick were they thinking? I do not freaking blame you. It's a massive learning curve, and I feel like it's obvious that it would scare away players really freaking early on and really quickly. So the real challenge to this game isn't really reacting to the notes. It's remembering what the notes are, which is, I feel like every note that comes across is really just like a test. Like, it's not testing your skills, it's testing your knowledge. Which, by the way, this game also has a ridiculous, difficulty in terms of just reaction time, not just knowledge based, but obviously just, like a DDR, you go higher difficulty, it gets more ridiculous until it looks almost impossible for a human to complete. This game has that exact same thing too. And I would say that its lower difficulties are like harder than some other games, other rhythm games, easy difficulties. So like, it's already trying to beat the frick out of you in every way as soon as you start this game. There's also a health system, which I appreciated, but also increases the difficulty, in which you have a finite number of hits before you fail. So like, there are health items that you can pick up as you continue through the song. So like, there will be apples or turkeys or something like that. And if you hit it, then you'll get a hit back, and you'll be able to or you get a miss back or whatever. And you'll be able to, take more misses as you complete the song. But if you miss like 4 notes in a row without having any health, then you automatically fail the song and you have to start over. So like, while I appreciate like kind of incorporating the crypt of the Necrodancer, almost like adventure game elements into that, and it makes you feel like you're earning your ability to stay in the song, whereas like, in most rhythm game, it's just like, it's not, if you fail enough notes in a row, you'll eventually certainly lose, but like, it's not like that strict. Like 4 in a row is a very small amount of hits to miss in a game like this. Most rhythm games are going to give you a little bit more cushion. This game is really rough on that, and like, you'll have to wait until certain parts of the song when those like apples are scheduled to be there for you to even have the ability to climb back up and gain that health back. While again, I appreciate that like, it makes it feel more video gamey and like an adventure game, this is still like another level of difficulty that is inherently going to push further back on the player as they continue through the game, or any track for that matter. So when I first started playing the game, I started playing on normal difficulty, and I found it was like nearly freaking impossible. I was like, I maybe did like the first 4 tracks on normal difficulty, and I got to the 5th track, and I even just saw, like, I was exhausted. I was like, oh my gosh, like how is anybody supposed to be able to do this whole campaign if it's going to continue to get harder? And like I saw that the beats per minute or whatever, the BPM for the song was way higher on the next song I was about to do. And I was like, F it, knock the difficulty freaking down. There is no freaking way I'm doing this at all. It was intimidating, and I was immediately hit in the face with the learning curve. Like most kind of require you to go through that, but it's just an odd choice. It is an odd choice to put so many barriers in front of the player to even get started and be decent at it. Like that, even on an easy difficulty, it is an odd choice. This game has great production value. Great production value. Animations are great. Fun designs for characters. Very, basic. You just watch somebody play this game, and it looks good. It just looks good. The animations and everything really carry the story, and the tracks themselves, the design around the music and everything is really, flash animated and really gorgeous. And I really enjoyed just looking at the game when I wasn't like freaking concentrating super hard on just the notes coming through. Story also has Rhythm Heaven mini games, like I kind of said, but I was really hoping that these would be more prevalent. They were prominently featured in a lot of the trailers, and they're pretty sparse and really few throughout the single-player campaign. And that's the only the single-player campaign is not even intended to be like the main thing in this game. It's the arcade mode where you have access to even more songs. And I feel like these mini games were kind of buried in the single player, which was clearly not supposed to be like the main focus of the game for the players to like find it within the menus and stuff. So I don't know. I was really disappointed by that. I really wanted to see that. It's not a game breaker or anything, but I really was hoping to see more from those. I thought I would never get to the point where I would hit, like the flow state. And like the flow state to me is like that magic moment. Like in Beat Saber, I feel like it's so easy to hit the flow state. Like once you kind of get a hang of the basics in Beat Saber, hitting a flow state is so easy and so fun. You just hit that right song with the right track, and you really do feel that flow state. And that is what that's what I'm looking for from a rhythm game. And I was like, dude, there's no freaking way I'm getting there. Like there's too much here. I cannot pick up on everything. It's really pushing me to the limit. What the heck am I going to do? Towards the end of the campaign, it actually started happening. And that's where kind of the journey started to turn around. I was like, holy frick, they really just effed up. Like, how could they have thought this design was the right way to go? Like, this is really appalling. Like, that they had that so much of this game is so good, and there's so many interesting ideas here, and they just absolutely effed it up by putting this huge barrier to entry and this huge learning curve. And then I was like, oh, wait. It's kind of clicking. It's kind of clicking with me here. Admittedly, took me like 4 hours to like do that and a lot of pain, but, I eventually got there. And that's when, like I got out of the campaign, I looked in the arcade mode, there were even more tracks for me to do. I was like, oh, dang, there's a lot of content here. That's awesome. And then, like, there's even a really easily accessible community mode where, like, people are making tracks for all these different songs, like whatever song they want. There's some really creative, like, songs or tracks that, like, are kind of jokey. Like, I love a good community mode. I think that's what makes Beat Saber like a forever game for me, is like the community support behind it that makes new tracks and great tracks all the time from songs that I love. And like, that's what was here with the community mode in Rift of the Necrodancer. And I was so excited to see that. I was like, this could be like another forever game with this community mode that's so accessible out of the box for free. And at the end of the game, at the end of it all, I really enjoyed my time with it. Like, I ended up walking away from this game really glad that I gave it a shot, and I tried to force myself through the campaign so that I could, I could get my money's worth, essentially, because what I was really there for was the Hololive DLC. That's what really got me in the door, because the demo scared me away. And, I was like, okay, I'm going to get my money's worth. I'm going to at least go through the single-player campaign, and I pushed my way through. I was like, you know what? I'm really glad that I did that. I think this is unfortunate, because every other rhythm game I've ever seen has an easy entry point, easy mechanics to grab, and they try to ease players in. They give them a nice tutorial. They kind of rub them on the back a little bit. They give them a nice apple juice or something, and they say, congratulations. Here's your progression. You've unlocked this first song or this first batch of songs. Why don't you kind of get used to them? Now you can move on. It's... Every rhythm game I've ever played has kind of been like that. But this one has such a steep learning curve, it is almost impossible for me to actually, recommend this game. Who am I going to recommend it to other than a hardcore music junkie, who's immediately going to pick it up and be like, okay, yeah, I know, these are some advanced rhythm game mechanics, but, I have seen them before. I've interacted with them before, and I have the muscle memory to I've trained my twitch reflexes enough to be able to react to these quick enough that it's not as big of a problem for me. I cannot see myself recommending this to anybody outside of hardcore people or people who are looking for a rhythm game like this, but I would honestly say don't even play the demo. I played the demo and I was like, F this, I'm not ever going to touch this game. And I think I would just kind of go into it. I think what I would do is if somebody came to me and they said, hey, I'm thinking about Rift of the Necrodancer, what do you think? I'd say do not play the demo, because you really need to know just off the get-go, it's really hard. It's a really difficult rhythm game. If you are willing to put up with that, if you are willing to try and get through that initial wall and bust through it, then you will have a really good time. And it's a really well-made rhythm game, and there's a community mode, and there's great DLC, and you will get your money's worth and you will enjoy it. If that is not the case, do not touch this game. If you are not willing to go through the pain and suffering, don't do it. And I am also a really firm believer on you should not have to suffer. I think you should not have to suffer if in any game. I think this is a belief I've had for decades, going back to Final Fantasy 13. And I think that sounds a little hyperbolic to some. Some people would not say that the opening hours of Final Fantasy 13 are suffering, but what they would say is the common thing is Final Fantasy 13 gets good, you just have to play it for 20 hours. And I would always be like, that's insane. How would you not care about somebody's time so much that you would just be like, F your 20 hours? I have no interest in saving you 20 hours or making this first 20 hours of the game fun. That, maybe you can have an extra 20 to 40 hours of a good game, but you have to get through the 20 hours that suck first. I've never understood that. I think that's an absolutely horrific thing to tell anybody. It gets good after 50 hours. F that. It's crazy. I think it's kind of stupid to tell somebody, I recommend Rift of the Necrodancer. It gets good after 5 hours of being miserable. No, that sounds like they should have had a better onboarding for this game. They should have trained players better. They should have had options to make, the easy mode on this should have been it's just slimes. It's just one hits. And, or something there should have been a toggle if you really didn't want to deal with that. And I understand from a development standpoint what they were trying to do. They were like, let's make a rhythm game that has some interesting and unique mechanics because, like rhythm games are so boring in terms of how the player is interacting with them. It's just up, down, left, right. That's so boring. There surely can be a way we can add variety to that and, make interacting with the game on a regular basis or on an initial basis very, varied, for lack of a better word. Sorry. But, I see the design idea, but clearly I just don't think it was executed well because there's obvious ways I can think of off the top of my head that you can dumb this down and make, like I said, a toggle or just a really, really, really easy mode, whatever. And you can make it a lot easier for a player who sucks balls like myself to actually be good at it. Or, even if I'm really good at the super duper baby easy mode of this game, at least I'd be getting, my fun out of that. And then if, like I do on every other rhythm game I've ever played, and how rhythm games are typically designed, I can ease into those higher difficulties. So I think this is a game that really suffers from trying to do too much and punishing players at the onset for it and really trying to appeal to what seems to be a hardcore rhythm game demographic. And like I said, I can think of easy ways to remedy this. And I don't think the game wants to do it. I don't think that's what the developers want to do. Otherwise, I think it's such an easy fix that they would have done it. And I mean, maybe I'm sure there's more that goes into it than just like, turn everything into a green slime. Like maybe that game would suck. Maybe that game wouldn't be fun. But like all the reviews I saw on Steam immediately were like, this game's hard. Like it's hard. It's basically was just a bunch of masochists in the comment section saying like, I suck at this game, but I keep coming back for some reason. And like, I don't know, that just doesn't seem like a fun time to me. And I know a lot of gamers like to say, oh yeah, the higher the difficulty, the more fun I have, all that bullcrap. I'm just not a believer in that. I don't think that's really a good way to design your game. And I think a rhythm game, that's like the worst way you can design it. And I know I'm saying I'm talking really negatively about this game. It sounds like I'm really condemning it. And I am, for an onboarding standpoint. For a new player who maybe wants to try this game out and isn't a hardcore rhythm game guy, I think, this is not a good game for you. I don't think you're really going to like it unless you really want to put in the work. And the thing is I had a lot of fun with this game. It just took me 4 hours of pain and misery to get there. And I would love, honestly, I would love to go back to this game. I would love to go back to it. I would love to play some of the tracks again. I would love to go and see what the community has cooked up, if they've made even more tracks with songs that I like. I would love to see that. But I can't recommend that to everybody. And I don't think I can recommend it to most people. So regardless, this game may be perfect for hardcore rhythm game enthusiasts, but it's not perfect for most everyone else. And that's, I think, a failure of a game, to be quite frank. I feel like this game had way too much money put into it to just be, a hardcore rhythm game enthusiast game. And I don't even think hardcore rhythm game people are really taking to it. I've never seen that, at least. I haven't seen that, at least. So, not that I'm like flipping around the hardcore rhythm game enthusiast community or whatever, but you get it. So, I don't know. It's a game I really enjoyed, but it is a game that is hard for me to recommend. And that is my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on Rift of the Necrodancer. So, that wraps up this fairly lengthy. It's been a while since we've gone over 2 hours. Really took my time this episode. Maybe you noticed by how much I rambled incoherently. I hope it was worthy of listening to. I hope you had a good time listening. And thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being a friend. And thank you for allowing me to talk about something that I love so much. I say it at the end of every episode. I've tried to, I was thinking about this. You know what? This is just a little bit of me and you time, okay? Me and you time. You made it all the way to the end. We're going to have a personal conversation. Most of the episode, I'm trying to entertain. I'm trying to inform, right? I'm trying to use the vast autistic amount of video game knowledge that I have up in my brain to seem like it was a worthwhile investment of my life and time, okay? That's what I'm trying to do. But right now, this is a me and you thing. So, like, before I was recording the episode, I was thinking, oh, I really need to have an intro. And I do, you know, every episode I say, oh, hello and welcome. I'm Henry. I'm your host, blah, 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 the Plug and Play podcast. But I was like, I really need to have like a tagline, you know, like, this is the show about the video game conversation for video games and gamers like you and me, you know, or something like that. You know, I like playing video games, not just talking about them, you know, like, or something. I don't know. It's typically an influencer-y thing. It sounds professional. It, you know, kind of adds a familiarity to it and gives people an idea. You know, it gives people an idea of what they're in for, right? When I say it's Plug and Play podcast, like, I don't know, is this a news podcast? Am I a critic? You know, like, what am I doing here, you know? And I kind of go into the, you know, the news and, you know, the impressions I'm going to be hitting on, stuff like that. But, like, you know, a tagline is probably something I need. And I've kind of developed a semi-tagline for here, but it's really just me speaking from the heart. Because at the end of these episodes, that's kind of, you know, admittedly, you think, oh, Henry, podcasting is so easy. Bro, you try podcasting for 2.5 hours on your freaking own. It's actually kind of tiring to like never stop talking for 2.5 hours, to like be on for 2.5 hours nonstop. That's kind of more than you'd expect, believe it or not. But, you know, so like by the end of it, I'm honestly kind of spent, and I'm like, just kind of, you know, like, I'm like, okay, well, we've kind of gotten through the main content. The only people who are going to be here are the people who actually want to listen to what I have to say, right? And, you know, and by that I mean like everything, not just about video games. Which, by the way, genuinely grateful that you're still listening to me yap. But I kind of just speak from the heart, and that became the tagline of, like, you know, thank you for listening, thank you for being a friend. You know, I really appreciate you making it this far. And that's not a very good tagline, but it's the truth. It's the truth, and I mean it. And it's been another fun episode, I think. And I appreciate you making it this far with me, and I hope to see you in the next episode. And I hope that you are well, and I hope that you play some video games. Bye-bye.